Call 0 time aboard. Need help? Use help tutorials. Velocity 555, ready to start up. Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel ground. This is Velocity 555, position remote 83, information Golf, IFR to Perth, request startup. Velocity 555, startup approved, Golf correct, runway 25, fly runway heading squawk 5315, for pushback and taxi clearance call 126.50, Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel ground control. Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel ground, startup approved, Golf correct, runway 25, fly runway heading squawk 5315, for pushback and taxi clearance call 126.50, velocity 555. Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel ground, switching to 126.50, velocity 555. Canberra ground, holding short runway 35, Q-link 1466. Q-link 1466 Roger, holding short runway Canberra ground. Q-link 1466 contact tower at 118.70, Canberra ground. Canberra ground Roger, switching to tower at 118.70, Q-link 1466. Qantas 161, ready to start up. Velocity 1351, ready to start up. Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel Ground, this is Qantas 161, position 2307 Information Golf, IFR to Wellington Intel, request startup. Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel Ground, this is Velocity 1351, position T255 Information Golf, IFR to Darwin Intel, request startup. Qantas 161, startup approved, Golf correct, runway 34L, fly runway heading squawk 6707, for pushback and taxi clearance call 126.50, Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel Ground Control. Velocity 1351, startup approved, Golf correct, runway 34L, fly runway heading squawk 2474, for pushback and taxi clearance call 126.50, Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel Ground Control. Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel Ground, startup approved, Golf correct, runway 34L, fly runway heading squawk 6707, for pushback and taxi clearance call 126.50, Qantas 161. Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel Ground, startup approved, Golf correct, runway 34L, fly runway heading squawk 2474, for pushback and taxi clearance call 126.50, velocity 1351. Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel Ground, switching to 126.50, Qantas 161. Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel Ground, switching to 126.50, velocity 1351. D1 DR D2 Qantas 143, ready to start up. Qantas 811, ready to start up. Qantas 860, ready to start up. Q-Link 1516, ready to start up. Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel Ground, this is Qantas 143, position 2134 information Golf, IFR to Auckland Intel, request startup. Canberra Ground, this is Qantas 811, position 81111, information India, IFR to Melbourne Intel, request startup. Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel Ground, this is Qantas 860, position 2308 information Golf, IFR to Gold Coast Intel, request startup. Canberra Ground, this is Q-Link 1516, position 81111, information India, IFR to Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel, request startup. Qantas 143, startup approved, Golf correct, runway 34L, fly runway heading squawk 6120, for pushback and taxi clearance call 126.50, Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel ground control. Qantas 811, startup approved, India correct, runway 35, fly runway heading squawk 6512, for taxi clearance call 121.70, Canberra ground control. Qantas 860, startup approved, Golf correct, runway 34L, fly runway heading squawk 7712, for pushback and taxi clearance call 126.50, Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel ground control. Q-Link 1516, startup approved, India correct, runway 35, fly runway heading squawk 0042, for taxi clearance call 121.70, Canberra ground control. Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel ground, startup approved, Golf correct, runway 34L, fly runway heading squawk 6120, for pushback and taxi clearance call 126.50, Qantas 143. Canberra ground, startup approved, India correct, runway 35, fly runway heading squawk 6512, for taxi clearance call 121.70, Qantas 811. Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel ground, startup approved, Golf correct, runway 34L, fly runway heading squawk 7712, for pushback and taxi clearance call 126.50, Qantas 860. Canberra ground, startup approved, India correct, runway 35, fly runway heading squawk 0042, for taxi clearance call 121.70, Q-Link 1516. Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel ground, switching to 126.50, Qantas 143. Canberra ground, switching to 121.70, Qantas 811. Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel ground, switching to 126.50, Qantas 860. Canberra ground, switching to 121.70, Q-Link 1516. Canberra ground, with you, Qantas 811. Canberra ground, with you, Q-Link 1516. Qantas 811, Roger, Canberra ground. Q-Link 1516, Roger, Canberra ground. Canberra ground, request taxi clearance, Qantas 811. Canberra ground, request taxi clearance, Q-Link 1516. Qantas 811, cleared to taxi, Canberra ground. Q-Link 1516, cleared to taxi, Canberra ground. Velocity 1281, ready to start up. NG102, ready to start up. Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel ground, this is velocity 1281, position 2253 information Golf, IFR to Hamilton I, request startup. Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel ground, this is NG102, position remote 85, information Golf, IFR to Auckland Intel, request startup. Velocity 1281, startup approved, Golf correct, runway 34L, fly runway heading squawk 3777, for pushback and taxi clearance call 126.50, Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel ground control. NG102, startup approved, Golf correct, runway 34L, fly runway heading squawk 6347, for pushback and taxi clearance call 126.50, Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel ground control. Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel ground, startup approved, Golf correct, runway 34L, fly runway heading squawk 3777, for pushback and taxi clearance call 126.50, velocity 1281. Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel ground, startup approved, Golf correct, runway 34L, fly runway heading squawk 6347, for pushback and taxi clearance call 126.50, NG102. Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel ground, switching to 126.50, velocity 1281. Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel ground, switching to 126.50, NG102.
Too low terrain.
Canberra ground, holding short runway 35, Qantas 811. Qantas 811 Roger, holding short runway Canberra ground. Qantas 811 contact tower at 118.70, Canberra ground. Canberra ground Roger, switching to tower at 118.70, Qantas 811.
Too low terrain. Too low terrain. Too low terrain. Too low terrain. Minimums. Minimums. Sink rate, 100, 50, 40, 20. Bank angle, bank angle,
Canberra
bank angle,
ground,
bank
holding
angle.
short runway 35, Q-Link 1516. Q-Link 1516 Roger, holding short runway Canberra ground. Q-Link 1516 contact tower at 118.70, Canberra ground. Canberra ground Roger, switching to tower at 118.70, Q-Link 1516. Velocity 1627, ready to start up. Replay active, ESC to stop. Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel ground, this is velocity 1627, position T257 information golf, IFR2 Ayers Rock, request startup. Velocity 1627, startup approved, golf correct, runway 25, fly runway heading squawk 1613, for pushback and taxi clearance call 126.50, Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel ground control. Call 0 timed out. Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel ground, startup approved, golf correct, runway 25, fly runway heading squawk 1613, for pushback and taxi clearance call 126.50, velocity 1627. Sydney Kingsford Smith Intel ground, switching to 126.50, velocity 1627.
Too low terrain. Too low terrain. Minimums. Minimums. Too low terrain. Too low terrain. Too low terrain. Sink rate. Minimums. Minimums. Sink rate. Sink rate. 100. 50. 40. 30. 20. Bank angle. Bank angle. Bank angle. Bank angle.